Everybody, I am so excited to be going live with my favorite Priya. Give me a second till I get her on. This is her first live. Hi Priya, are you here? I'm gonna see how I can get her too. Yay! This is awesome! Hi, how
I
are
guess I'm not.
you?
I guess I'm not that
You're
technological challenged.
so
Manage this.
you're so incredible because there are people who like have taken like 10 minutes to figure this out. So I am so excited. Yay!
Great.
You
It's
look
lovely
you
to
look the
hear.
same. It's like 20 years haven't
Are
passed.
you serious? You know, I've aged
No,
a lot.
no. I honestly, it's like me sitting in Sushman's room like back in 2007 for like an after-school meeting. So this is like exactly the same. Amazing! I am so excited to have you here. Whoever's going to be joining us today, we're going to be talking about autism, inclusion. What are the policies, notes for school leaders and schools who consider inclusion, and to what extent is it possible, and what are the ways that we make out of it. I am so excited to do this. Oh, I think we lost Priya for a second, but I'm hoping we're going to have her back again. No worries. Okay, amazing. Hi, you're back. No
Yeah.
worries. Sometimes it just drops a little bit. So I'm gonna quickly give like a little 1 minute background on Priya, and then I'm gonna hand it over to you to do a better job of it. But right out of LSR, I done like a little course in special education when I joined Vasant Valley School to be on their special education team, and on the learning specialist team. And I worked with three little girls. I still remember them so clearly, and I remember the classroom that I worked with like they had learning disabilities and autism and like a hearing disability and all of that, and I'd supported them in inclusion. And I remember just being wowed by Vasant Valley School, and I remember once every week we used to have these after school meetings in Susha's office, and you guys were just like so kind and so amazing. And I feel like I got the push to go further and study autism, to learn more about the field, just because I was so inspired by the work I saw possible and the work that I saw happen across the school. It was just amazing. So I just owe you guys my beginning in life professionally. So I am so thankful, Priya and Sush and Vasant Valley, for getting me all the way here 20 years later. But you've done so much at this school, Priya. I'd love for you to share every like whatever you feel is a good beginning.
So, I started my journey also in Vasant Valley School. Vasant Valley School always knew that they were going to have children with special needs. It was built in their conception, so it
Yeah.
was nothing the DOE required us to do. Mrs. Puri had a vision, and she said that she always wanted a special section. So if you notice, we had ramps, and I've been there for 25 years and still going strong. And in fact, my journey started at Vasant Valley too, because I didn't think I didn't train to be a special educator. I studied in the States, and I did my bachelor's in child development with psychology. But when I came to meet Mr. Arun Kapoor, he just said, get into the special section. And to be very honest, I've learned so much by, like you're saying, by people like Shosh, who's my mentor and continues to be my closest and dearest friend.
Yeah.
Um, so I've learned a lot on the job. And like they say, education can teach you so much, but hands-on experience just gives you so much more of an edge, especially when you're working with children. And Shush always used to say, you're not working with files. So it's a very dynamic role because you keep changing your strategies. And I think that's very important for any educator to remember, that
Totally.
it's and I think it's not even I was just talking about just teachers in general. It's not like an ego battle, right?
Yeah.
And for special ed, especially, because if a child is not getting it, it's you have to be quick on the uptake to change your plan.
Totally.
you know
Totally.
so you
Yeah.
can't get stuck on on some lesson plan that you've made, because if that lesson plan isn't working, the objective
Totally.
is to learn
Totally.
and to teach,
Yeah.
right? So, like, Vasant Valley, it has a classroom with there's a special educator in each classroom that works with 3 to 4 children with additional needs, and they've all been diagnosed with additional needs. And there are other children that also have difficulties, and the special educator not only works with children with special needs, but also anybody in the classroom that needs help. And I think that's where it's a great place, because the mainstream teachers are as involved as the educators. And I think that's one of a very essential component for inclusion, right? Because inclusion can only be successful if all partners are equal and willing, right? So, like I said, we have a classroom and there's a special educator, but there's also a class teacher who's equally invested and involved. So if you were to ask me, inclusion doesn't mean just taking physical space in a classroom. It means to make the child valued. So if answers need to be modified and asked, if questions need to be modified and asked, it's giving, if, like, for example, you're giving a dictation, it would be very nice, and teachers in Vasant Valley do that, is to give an easier dictation to the child, easier word. So the child is very part of the classroom and not isolated, and has the confidence to also raise their hand and be part of this classroom discussion, or, question answer kind of thing.
Right.
Angna, since you've been there, you've noticed that everybody is very invested, right?
Totally. So Priya, I think so many people across, like, I think you and I have the privilege that we truly understand inclusion, but most people are still like grappling with what really is inclusion. So what does inclusion mean to you? And can you like share a few anecdotes or examples to kind of like lay out the word a little better?
Yeah. So see, for me, inclusion means being in an inclusive setting, but it also depends on how much the child needs to be included in everything, whether it's academic or non-academic. I think it's very child-centric, and it's very child-based. We make an IEP, which we evaluate. It's a dynamic document, which we evaluate every learning cycle, which is every 3. And, we talk about the things that the child may be good at, whether it's soccer or any kind of sport. So then, that is involved in his IEP. Constantly evaluated. It's looked at by a team of professionals. We have occupational therapists, there's language therapists, and there's special educators, and the classroom teachers. It's also the subject teachers. So inclusion is actually, Devangna, very individually based, according to me.
Correct.
Pre-teaching is a very important a tool in being to facilitate inclusion. I think pre-teaching is very important, because then the child can...
Priya, explain what's pre-teaching. No, because I like our viewers are going to be like people who are like, what? Like, what is that even? What is pre-teaching?
Okay, so pre-teaching means if you know that a particular chapter or lesson is going to happen in the classroom, it's important to pull the child out and do a one-on-one session, or, in a group, where you teach the children in a modified manner, if they can understand modified manner, of what the lesson will be. If they know in advance, they will be more empowered to take part, participate, answer. Otherwise, they're just going to be lost, right? It's like going to France and not knowing how to speak French, is how I look at it.
Totally. I'll just tell you, this morning I was helping one of our social workers who work in a school. There's a child who's struggling with sitting in his place. So we're just like actually using flashcards and like step by step, like rewarding him for every step and teaching him how to sit in a chair. And that's like the pre-teaching that we're currently doing with him.
Yeah. So like I said, it's very child-based. It's very child-centric. We also use a lot of picture cards. We do, the other thing is that a lot of children on the spectrum know they work better if they know what to expect. So it's a visual timetable in front of them, and they know after this is this.
Correct.
They'll be able to follow through on a schedule or a routine without having meltdowns.
Right.
Because they know what is expected and what's going to happen next, which I think is very important, because they like predictability, from what I've noticed, right?
Priya, can I ask you a follow-up question? So give one example of like inclusion that you've seen at Vasant Valley, where a kid went from like high needs, just like struggling to be included like today in mainstream, fully flourishing?
So we actually have a few students, Devangna, that were in the special section and that have been mainstream very successfully. So what we do is that I would tell a special educator to start pulling out the support slowly. So let them do one worksheet by themselves, or
Correct.
sit in one class that that they're good at.
Correct.
Like if it's life science English, the special educator should take a back seat and let the student see what they're gaining out of the classroom, how much they're retaining, how much they're able to answer. So we've actually been able to successfully mainstream like about 6 students that don't need support and that are thriving in the mainstream environment.
Wow.
Having said that, the class teacher also knows who these children are and will still look out for them.
Correct. Correct.
So, those children need a little more hand holding, but they manage very successfully without a special educator if and when they're ready.
Right. That's awesome. What are some excellent examples of inclusion that you've seen, like not just at Vasant Valley, but even like globally, like structural setups, or co-teaching setups, or like pull out, or like corners in the classroom? Like what are some examples of inclusion that you've seen that have just like blown you away?
So one of the things is peer teaching, right? So we do a lot of peer teaching also. So it's children teaching each other. So, you can have a group of children teaching, and, they're very creative. So they might be able to create an interesting lesson and a way to teach
Yeah.
I mean, peer teaching is something that's worked across the board in a very, very major way. Also do have pull-out sessions. So it's not we do 1:1 or 1:3, where we do remedial teaching also, which also really helps a lot.
Right. Huh. Amazing. And like, do they go for like do many of your kids on the spectrum, have many of them like gone ahead, sat for board exams, like gone to college? Like what's that ratio like?
Devangna, yes, some of them have, but it also really depends on the ability of the child. Now, that child would be high functioning, but yeah, a lot of them do sit for CBSE exams. A lot of them have done NIOS, but they're also the ones that are not able to follow that stream and they follow a functional curriculum. So, for those of you who don't know what a functional curriculum is, it's basically teaching life skills. It's maths that is more based on using a calculator or a calendar.
Correct.
So you're making them independent. Ultimately, what is our goal?
Yeah.
Everybody should be an independent member of society and live with respect and dignity, right? So a lot of our things is, okay, if you can't sit in a classroom and if you can't do a CBS exam or NIOS, at least be able to have life skills.
Yeah.
With, using an MRP and going shopping. I remember Shush and I used to go crazy about vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Even finding those little green or red dots on a packet to say whether this is vegetarian or non-vegetarian.
Right.
You can take them shopping. You can use mock shopping.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of ways that there's so many things that can be done, and it just depends on the child's ability, and I guess that's about it, right?
So Priya, can I ask you one more first question? So like, does Vasant Valley do a lot of work also with neurotypical families? Because I remember like you guys used, like Vasant Valley takes a lot of kids with high needs, moderate needs. Do you do a lot of like work with neurotypical families around sensitizing them? Because sometimes like neurotypical families are just like, we don't like, this child is disrupting the class, or all
Yes,
of
so
that.
definitely. So we have something called circle time, which we do with the children themselves. We have something called the tutor tuty session. So we do a lot of hand holding, even of the neurotypical community, because it's very important that children are empathetic towards each other, which they are, right? So at younger ages, they're invited to birthday parties. In fact, it's very heartwarming because just the other day, one of our children was having like this meltdown to go into class, and 6 of her classmates ran out to go and hold her hand and take her into class. Something like that brings tears to my eyes, because then you feel you've done a fantastic job. because it's
Totally.
not only teaching children with additional needs, it's also teaching empathy with the larger circle, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
also, like you're saying, so when we have parent teacher meetings, we do say that there are children with additional needs. And, if your child comes back and asks questions, please have open discussions that everyone is different. Right?
Right.
You don't have to call them
Yeah,
special. It's just like you may need extra help in something. These children need extra help in something
yeah.
else.
Yeah. Okay, so Priya, talk a little bit about like at what point do you make decisions when you're in, you might include a child on the spectrum of autism. At what point do you make decisions that we don't think we can go on with inclusion? We feel like these needs are too high or too much. Um,
So,
because sometimes like in my like I've like kind of like worked through school systems like, come on, like give me 6 more months, I'll get this child like ready, or I'll get them like fully settled in inclusion.
so
But like, what are your thoughts?
So I think inclusion should be planned keeping the child's needs in mind, and it should be so the child can be successful and feel a sense of worth,
Correct.
and avoid situations where the child can feel that he's failing.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't think inclusion is one size fits all.
Totally.
I uh, the I think we all thrive in environments that are made for
Mm.
us, and this is equally true for a child with special
Totally.
needs. I think you know um, I don't think inclusion should be non-negotiable. I think we should keep the child's needs front and center.
Right.
Is the setting really conducive? Is
Right.
he going into sensory overload? Is he
Right.
in distress?
Right.
If that, then inclusion is not right, because he may not have the skills at that moment to sit in an inclusive classroom.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times, Devangna, to tell you very honestly, a lot of my battles is speaking to young parents that have children for the
Hmm.
first time, and they feel if our child is an inclusive setup, everything will be okay.
Correct.
My biggest challenge is telling them that no,
Correct.
sometimes inclusion is not the right thing, because
Correct.
if the child is running around, you can see that he's visibly distressed and uncomfortable,
Yeah.
then not a thriving environment for them to be at that moment.
Right.
So
Right.
at that time, I think it would be very important to teach them the skills needed to thrive in an environment, maybe 1 year later, maybe 2 years later,
Right.
maybe 3 years later.
Right.
Unfortunately, sometimes that never happens.
Right.
Having said that, Devangna, as opposed as some of these parents have been to an idea of not being in an inclusive setting, when they've seen the success of, they can see the child calmer when they work in a smaller, quieter environment. Like, we started this resource room. We started the early years program in Vasant Valley, which you worked at, right? The Blue Room.
Yeah. Briefly, for a little
Yeah.
bit.
So now the early years program has been able to also successfully mainstream children from the early years into the special section mainstream. So, when the parents see success like that, they realize that the child is calmer at the end of the day. They're not getting phone calls to say, please take, this one is having a meltdown right now. So
Correct.
it-
Correct.
they actually see a visible difference in the child when the child is calmer and happier. That's why
Totally.
I don't think that inclusion is one size fits all at all.
So can I so the Blue Room is like a dedicated space for children with high needs.
Yeah.
How many children from there move into like eventually end up moving into mainstream? What does that
Well,
look like?
I
Like
think
mainstream special education.
successfully we've had around 4 or 5 of them that have actually, or maybe a little bit higher, that have actually moved very successfully into the special section mainstream.
Wow.
But it was after the fact that they got the initial grounding that they needed, right?
Correct.
I think that was very important. And if at that point we had put them without the blue rooms or the early years programs intervention, if we put them in a classroom, I don't think the success rate would have been very high. To be
Agreed.
very honest with you.
Agreed. We can almost like traumatize the
Ex-
child sometimes, right?
exactly.
Because their needs are so high. So do you have any specific examples of when like inclusion hasn't worked out, or like any advice to schools? Because there's like in like we work with Brain Bristle works with Priya lots of low income schools where they sometimes don't have a choice, but they take it, like they have to admit a child on the spectrum of autism into a BMC school. But like any advice for schools, what they could do, what are some decisions they could
Well,
make,
you know,
what are some better options for these
see,
children?
for example, I think all schools that have special educators, I don't think it should be a tick box thing. I think they should train dedicated special educators. And I think, if possible, keep the groups small.
Huh.
We are very privileged at Vasant Valley, where our student teacher ratio is very, very high. And, we don't take, we work as to 1:3 or 4, and we don't take beyond that because we want to give off our best. Having said that, Devangna, I think making an IEP, which is an individualized, um,
Educational program. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very important, because it's you can actually gauge the success if you have an IP which is evaluated every other, maybe once in 3 months, because then you can subtract or add things that are working and take out the things that are not working.
Correct.
So I think keeping a detailed record of the progress really would help all schools, because they would see exactly how they are going and what is working for the
Yeah.
child. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And tell me, does your support, like the level of support, change from primary years to middle school?
No, we still work as to 1:3.
Wow.
The only thing that changes is that when they get to senior school, we try to build more independent skills in them. For example, in junior school, we take them from one class to the other. In senior school, we might say, okay, you know what, you have a Western music class, so please go yourself and come back. So the child becomes a little bit more responsible for themselves. They can have, they eat lunch with their friends without a special educator being there. So
Yeah.
they get a lot more, they get a lot more leeway as far as building their independent life skills is concerned.
Got it. I said, Priya, one more question about, so if you got a classroom, like how many kids with needs would you admit into a classroom?
Ideally, like I said, we
Like,
work
what's your quota for the number of kids you would take in primary school, with who have like IPs or high needs?
per classroom.
Per classroom.
So we don't have more than four per class.
Wow.
Four per class.
Okay.
But then we have one special educator working with those 4 children.
Yeah.
Now, those 4 children also, Devangna, all have different
Correct.
needs. So the special educator is basically working on 4 different IEPs with 4 different children with 4 different needs.
Correct.
So she has a lot on her plate to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, more than that, I would feel is diluting the system, because it's impossible to work with larger numbers than that if you want a success rate, right?
Totally. So how do you guys decide with like the admission process must be super hard. How do you like decide, like, is it like a lottery system?
No. So basically, students apply to the special section, and I meet the students, I meet the parents, and I see if the child is classroom ready. If the child is classroom ready, we put them into the classroom. If they are not, then I suggest the EYP. Go into the EYP for a couple of years, like I'm saying. Some of them have been able to successfully come on the other side. And if not, then at the age of 10, we ask them to look for a pre-vocation, because clearly education is then not working for them. Right?
Got it.
So
Got it.
that's also on a very individual based.
Yeah.
It's a team effort. I think everybody works together for it to be a successful inclusive program.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna ask you like this is like super. Because I feel like lots of teachers, parents look at like watch some of these things. So how much do your special educators fit into what's already happening in the classroom, and how much do they additionally lesson plan, modify curriculum? Like what kind of stuff do you guys? How do you balance out, pull out versus push in?
Okay, so basically what we do is, like I said, we do a lot of pre-teaching. And so let's say that there are 4 students in a group. Maybe one is following the class curriculum. So then, he needs or she needs very little support.
Correct.
If somebody else needs more, we'll actually modify lessons, right? So we get something called a lesson plan that is given to the special educators before by the classroom teacher. And then the special educator will modify that lesson according to the child's needs.
Amazing.
So reduce the content, and ask more, so children struggle with long answers.
Yeah.
So it could be multiple choice, it could be fill in the blanks, it could be matching.
Got
So you
it.
make the assessment process also simpler,
Got it.
where you're
Got it.
not asking for long answers because you know that that's another area that the child may need additional help with.
Got it.
So not only are you modifying their lessons, you're also modifying their assessments.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Amazing. And like, how do you? Because like I've like struggled. Like I've had philosophical discussions and struggles with this. Because sometimes I feel like the child can do a little more than what he's doing. So I'm like, let him try and answer like 2 paragraphs. Let him try and do 3 paragraphs. Let him.
Yeah, but
So like,
no,
yeah.
so but see, you never know, right? Why would you curb a child? So if you think that he's capable, you should push, because you never know at the end of it what the actual capability is.
Correct. Correct.
So not it's not it's not dumbing it down, it's actually
Yeah.
pushing the child to their maximum potential. So if you feel that they can read, then let them read the whole chapter, and just ask them that, please let me know what have you understood by this, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I feel like keeping our hopes and work high sometimes on including autistic kids rather than modifying also
Definitely.
helps. Yeah.
So, Devanga, it also comes down to, like I'm saying, it's each child. You can see
Correct.
children that can actually will be able to handle it, and there are children that need help.
Right.
Now, so it really depends on gauging the child.
Yeah.
And as an educator, you kind of know, well, if I push this kid a little bit more, I know he'll be able to achieve it. So
Correct.
for those children, yeah, you just push them further.
Correct. Makes sense. Totally. Okay. Awesome. I have one last question for you, Priya, which is what like if like lots of schools across India aren't like don't have the legacy and the education and the wisdom like Vasant Valley. So like for a school which is just like figuring out inclusion just like as it's happening, right? Like somebody from a neighborhood house has come and said, "Ye relo." Like today I was at a school. There's a mother who has an autistic child who's like actually like the shadow teacher, and she has another little newborn baby who is sleeping on a chaddar on this side. So like these schools are just like we'll just take whatever comes our way. What would be like some of your pieces of advice, or like some policymaker advice, school leader advice, like what are some thoughts that you feel like schools which are figuring out all of this should know?
See, for example, I think it's very important to take trained special educators, because I think that's very important. Educational background, a trained special educator, somebody like you're saying who's positive, who has a positive outlook, who will be able to multitask, who is not dogmatic that it's either my way or the highway, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of attitude needs to be around, people that are willing to make quick decisions and changes, keeping the child in the forefront.
Yeah.
And like I think ultimately, Devangna, it's all about the child.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
keep the numbers small. I mean, really keep the numbers small, because if you want to do justice, then keep the numbers small.
So Priya, one last follow-up question on this. Like lots of these schools don't budget for it. Like most schools don't budget for special education, one special educator per grade level. Like sometimes they just have one counselor in a primary school, one counselor for a high school. Do you feel like all teachers should maybe be trained on a little bit of like special needs and education? Like how should these schools figure it out?
Yeah, so if the mainstream teacher is also trained, then that's extra support to the special educator, especially where you're saying they don't have the economic privilege that a school like Vasant Valley has. So
Yeah.
if more teachers, or if more mainstream teachers are trained also, it's double the hands,
Totally.
right? So everyone's working towards it.
Totally. Okay, amazing. Any other last thoughts on especially inclusion and autism? Because like learning disabilities, ADHD, all of that is a little still like manageable, but sometimes autism, as you and I know, can be way harder to include, especially like high needs autism. Any last
You
thoughts on that?
Devangna, like I
Yeah.
said, uh, let the child decide. I think it's very important for parents to see. It's every parent's goal and dream is to have a child in an inclusive setup, but I think it should be more child led
Yeah.
than parent led, right?
Right.
So I always tell the parents that I'm here to do what's best for the child. And if that means that your expectations are not real at that
Yeah.
moment, then it's very important to keep the child in the forefront and see where will the child benefit the most.
Right.
That would be my advice to everybody that's watching.
Got it.
See cues from the child, see
Yeah.
what's causing him distress, what's, just you'll be able to gauge.
That's awesome. There's some music that started. Okay, that's amazing. Anything else that you feel like we should share before we close out,
No,
Priya?
I think we're good to go, and thank you for having
This
me.
is super helpful because I know like it's like a lot of stuff you already know and do. So it's like super easy and natural for us, but like for so many millions and millions of family across India, it's just like
It's a
so valuable to hear all of this.
I think having a child with special needs is it's a journey, and it's a journey it's a difficult one, but it can also be very fulfilling as you see the child progress and gain in multiple ways. And don't lose hope, and just hang in there is what I'd like to say.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Priya.
Thanks,
Thank you, thank you,
Ivana.
thank you,
Thank
thank you. If
you.
anyone wants to reach out to Priya, you could just like I'll put her email in the caption, and she's all yours.
Thank
Thank you so much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Take
Bye
care. I'll see you guys
bye.
soon. Bye.